Welcome to the Face-to-Face Ministries podcast, the #1 resource for learning what it means to have a healed heart, connect more deeply with Jesus, and experience true and lasting transformation in your life. I am one of your hosts, Melinda Wilson.
And I'm your other host, Kathy Little. Please hit subscribe so you don't miss any of the fresh content that we're continuing to release. And while you're at it, we greatly appreciate your help in getting the word out by giving us a 5-star rating and leaving us a quick review.
You can also keep up with us by following our social media by searching face2faceministries.org on Facebook, and that has no spaces, no numbers, and no caps, and on Instagram at face2facemin, and that is all one word.
Our team also offers one-on-one ministry sessions that can be done virtually. And one of our favorite things to do is to train others to do what we do in helping others connect with Jesus. So if you want information on that, we can help you out.
Yeah, and for more information about all the resources, including what Kathy's talking about, our trainings, our events that we offer, visit face2faceministries.org. And while you're there, please sign up for our newsletter.
All right, let's dive into today's episode. Hey everyone,
Hey.
We got episode 156 for you today, and it is the continuation of our conversation with Felicia Murrell. If you missed it, go back and catch episode.
She is a treasure.
Yeah,
for
you
sure.
want to start with part 1 last episode, but this is part 2. We're excited about you guys hearing that. We are somewhere really pretty right now, enjoying a little bit of time off in Lake Tahoe after our Dashaway weekend. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, so if you're watching this and you see this beautiful lake behind us and even hear birds and a plane, not Superman, that is where we've been. And hey, you can come next year at the same time to Dashaway.
Yeah, August 15th to 17th. Pull those dates aside for Tahoe next year. We've got some really great things that we're excited about happening with that.
And we still have enrollment for Kathy.
Yeah, Emmanuel Foundations. Hey, listen, we train and equip people with the Emmanuel approach. And if you are interested in learning that for any context, even if you want to just use it in your church setting or with your family, we've got foundations starting on September 3rd. And we also, that's the beginning of our full core program that you can be in for up to a year, where we can train you if you want to use the tools in a more one-on-one setting and deal with pain and trauma stuff. And the beautiful thing about the Emmanuel approach is that it doesn't re-traumatize people. It's so gentle, and we love inviting people who are already helping others to utilize these tools to supplement and enhance what they're already doing in counseling fields and such. But we'd love to invite you to that, and that's emmanueltraining.com/Emmanuel Foundations, and Emmanuel is actually spelled with an I, so emmanueltraining.com/Emmanuel Foundations. So we'd love to have you join us there.
And again, part 2 of Felicia Murrell, like Pearl. And yes, if you haven't listened to the first part, please do. It really was an experience. You know, when you're sitting across from somebody, even if it's on Zoom, and you feel their heart and their energy and their love. And this is who Felicia is. And it was a gift to have a conversation with her. So thank you for listening, and enjoy this episode with part 2 with Felicia Murrell.
For me, I grew up Pentecostal and charismatic, and there was a lot of teaching about you subdue the flesh, or you cut the flesh off. The flesh was bad, everything about, and we've equated the body and the flesh as the same thing when really they're not the same.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah,
because we've had that language, we've done a real disservice at the unity of body, spirit, and soul in our humanity. And I think love is inviting us back into a wholeness that is really embodied.
How did these things open up to you, Felicia? Because I know that many, many people would resonate with what you're saying, even if it wasn't exactly that your flesh is bad. So, and all the things that we've misinterpreted Jesus saying. But how did you even come into this awareness? Like, what woke you up to this, even the cosmic okayness? And I know some people are going to be like, cosmic, that just means bit universe. It's all encompassing. It's not a new age word. Again, finding the language, what's important about language. But how did you wake up to this awareness of the interconnectedness and the embodiment and all that you are talking about. What led you to this?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Thank you for asking that question. I love it because, I it's so funny. I don't think I realized how deeply entrenched I was into um, belief and dogma and believing what I was fed. And actually this was an invitation by spirit. And because I'm Pentecostal, it might sound a little woo, but I literally was watching at that time one of my favorite speakers on I was watching a video of them sharing. And as they were speaking, I had a sense and not an audible sound, but they were sharing something and I'm kind of, I'm watching alone, but I'm amening and, doing my little yeah, resonating thing. And and I felt like I heard spirit say, "Do you believe that?"
Mm,
And it felt so loud within me that I looked around. I know I'm alone, but I still looked around because that's how loud it felt within me. And I kept listening to the speaker. I disregarded it even though I felt
mm,
it, and I kept listening to the speaker. And a few more minutes passed and I heard it again. Do you believe that? And I paused enough in awareness to realize, this spirit. And so I say back, but out loud,
mhm.
literally, well, do you believe that? And what I felt like spirit said to me was, I believe that's true to him where he
Mm,
is on the journey right now.
mm,
And it gave me pause,
Mm.
and enough pause that I needed to move it through my body. So I paused the video, I went outside in the neighborhood and I took a walk, and I walked for about 2 or 3 miles. And as I'm walking, just I was not praying, I wasn't anything, I just was walking out in nature. I just needed to embody, I just needed to put some movement to the energy that was stirring inside of me from the question and what it did. It shifted. There was a disruption for sure
mm,
in the question. Um, but as I'm walking, I felt like spirit said to me, Felicia, I need you to hand to me everything you believe to be true about God, and
mm,
I will hand back to you what is true.
Mm.
And I said yes to that. And so I said, God, I took the invitation and turned it into a prayer as I was walking. And I just said, God, I hand to you everything I believe to be true about you, everything that I've been taught in my life, every way that I've ever looked at your scripture or everything. I give that to you. And and I ask you to give back to me what is true.
mm,
And I was thinking of Jesus is the way, the truth, and the light, knowing that what would come back to me would be the way of Jesus.
mm,
And I prayed that prayer. I didn't really think anything more about it. But shortly after that, I started Brad's book, A More Christ-Like God,
mm.
2013.
Yep.
Um,
Brad
Bradley
Zerzak.
Jersak.
Brad
Yeah.
Jerzak, I've read it. Powerful.
Zach, I want to make sure I say the whole name, Bradley Jersak. And I knew of Bradley through Jason Upton connection there and the listening prayer book that Bradley and Jason had done together. So his name was not new to me because of that book. But reading A More Christ-Like God, and there was a YouTube video of a beautiful gospel, and it's like the gospel in three chairs.
Yeah.
And that was an invitation into a journey that it's just been really beautiful. But it was that. So it started
Mhm,
with me watching that preacher, spirit saying that to me praying that prayer back to spirit, and Brad's book in my hand. And I literally can go back to that moment of there's an opening.
mm,
There was a space for capacity to say, and what I know to be true to this day is a lot of the things that we believe when we don't question who told you that or why did they
mhm,
tell you that or who told them that and why did that person tell them that? How do we get to
mhm,
interpretation?
Hmm.
mhm,
And most often in churches, we just take the interpretation as the
mhm,
gospel and we believe it without any critical thinking or curiosity or
mhm,
anything.
mhm,
And I had enough trust um, that I would remain tethered to the Trinity, right? To this Trinitarian love and faith, that I did not have fear of unraveling.
Mm,
And some people, they have a fear that if they pull
mm,
one thread, the whole thing will
mm,
collapse and it'll lead them to this thing. And I think often of Paul Young talks about Jesus on the cross, and he says the greatest act of trust for Jesus was saying, while he was on the cross, Father, into your hands I commit my
mm,
spirit. And for me, when I said yes to that, it was that same kind of trust that Jesus was saying, which was, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit, right? Like, I'm not worried about going so far off the rails that I lose my anchor
mhm,
to God,
mhm,
because
mhm,
my spirit is committed to
mhm,
Father.
mhm,
Father holds that, right? And so from that place of Bradley's Book of More Christ-like God and other things, The Body Keeps the Score is another one, Hillary McBride's book.
mhm,
There's just been different authors and paths. Prentice Hip Hill is a non-binary African American therapist that does a lot of somatic work. And I've been able to see how all of these things weave into the thread of
mhm.
love. So I think one of the things that happened for me, Richard Rohr says that the word Catholic actually means
Right,
universal,
yes,
right?
yes.
And so, when I think about cosmic Christ, or the universality of God in that big kind of expansive way, I'm looking for expressions of love. I'm
Mm,
looking for truth. Where is truth shining?
mm,
Because one of the things I think about often is, how did people know God before the
mhm,
Bible was printed,
mhm.
right? And I'm not trying to take anything away from the Bible, but I go back to God as
Mhm,
relational.
mhm.
Come on.
And before there was a printing press,
Right, right.
before we actually had this thing that has become our idol,
Mhm,
how did people know
mhm,
God? And when we go even back to inside of that Bible, God breathed into Adam. His first thing was to take his body, put it to Adam's body. So embodied, body to body, breath was blown into man's body, right? So when you talk about an embodied faith or this embodied spirituality, God and man and the breath of God was
mm,
blown into us, and it enlivened and
mm,
awakened Adam.
mm,
That's how
mm.
he came to know Christ. And so, how through our heads only are we really knowing the depth of Christ if we leave out the embodied act?
Yeah,
It started
yeah.
with Ruach.
Right. Yeah, I've thought of that too, Felicia, of people overseas in other countries that don't have the printed Bible. How do they know God? And there's a lot of people that don't. So still to this day in persecuted nations, how do they have an experience with God? We hear of dreams and things like that, supernatural, really transcendent experiences. And so I appreciate that, and even being able to talk about it. And going back to what you said, that some people are afraid if they pull one thread, the whole thing is going to
Yeah.
fall apart. And I feel like, you get a picture of the house of cards. And I feel like there's almost, for me, and I'll say for me, because I've like, no, this is what I've been taught. It's heretical or blasphemous to question anything or to be curious. But I think that word curiosity should be more invited into conversation about our relationship with God, our Christianity, following Jesus, because it's just for me the last few years feeling the freedom to even ask questions without fear of punishment or without fear of, I say persecution very loosely, so I shouldn't even say that word because that can conjure up a lot of images, maybe
Pushback.
pushback or people being like, whoa, don't you dare say that. And I wonder, Felicia, like, what do you feel? And I think it's fear, but like, what keeps people from, they're actually, they have more faith in in their certainty than in actually who God is. And I wonder
Yeah.
what keeps people from being able to be curious about, is God who I've really known God to be? And are there questions that I can ask? What do you feel in your experience is at the heart of people not being willing to do that or even engage this kind of conversation?
I'm not sure that I know. I do think that people are afraid. Some people are afraid. I One of the things that I've learned in my years and just living a life of freedom in inner healing modalities of helping people get free. Freedom is both attractive and it also, I won't use the word offensive, but it
Mm.
definitely can scare some people, right? And they want freedom with parameters and freedom with boundaries. And any type of boundaries is not freedom, that's still. And so how do people manage themselves inside of freedom? And for me, love is the structure
Mm.
in which freedom is governed,
Mm.
right? And when I say that, it's because love is big enough to be a container for it all. When love is my structure and how I live and move and live, I'm never going to allow my freedom, my use of freedom to splash over and spill onto the banks of someone else, right? I am free with you in mind. As a matter of fact, my I includes. There is no I without you. And so I'm always
Mm.
considering my spouse, my kids, my world, my neighbors, inside of my freedoms. It's not going to spill, right? And, but when we have been raised in ways that we use control and certainty to mask fear and to keep people in line,
Mm.
those tools have to work or we wouldn't use them. Let's just acknowledge that. It's a lot easier than teaching someone to manage the vision of themselves, of themselves on a daily basis, and to govern themselves inside of relationship with fear. And so that's why we pick up the other tools. Um, how do you get there? For me, I two things come to mind. I think when we're quiet, there's something to solitude and stillness. There's a song that you hear, there's a sound, there's a harmony and a resonance inside of us. It's like picking up a shell at the beach and how you can hear the ocean inside of that shell. Um, the song of love sings within us constantly. It has never stopped from when we were knit and formed and as a thought in God's mind and to being knit and formed and placed in our mom's womb. That sound is always there. And in a place of stillness and solitude, our being vibrates with that sound. And it is an invitation to come home to the truth of ourselves. And so in the busyness of doing, it's easy for the whisper of that song to be drowned
Mm.
out. Um, when we're quiet enough, whether that's meditation, whether it's centering prayer, whether it's just a nice hike through the woods or whatever place of vulnerability where the walls can come down and your life gets quiet and still enough for you to hear the sound. I think that sound is the invitation that helps us be daring enough to become curious, to start asking some questions. And it's the same thing about therapy. I'll liken it to that. And I tell people this all the time because I've seen this as a pastor. I've seen this happen when people get married. In the safest places, all of our stuff that we've repressed, all the trauma, all the things starts rising to the fore, right? And when we don't know what to do with it, we tamp it back down.
Mhm.
And we think it's better closed off than dealt with. And then we get really safe and really happy and really not on guard anymore and it starts coming back up. And all of a sudden, this safe place that was so full of joy, now we're fussing at each
Mm.
other and we're picking each other's head off and we don't understand that what happened is in that intimacy, into me you see, in that intimate place, everything that we had repressed and not dealt with starts rising to the fore. But that invitation is because love wants, the refining fire of love wants to burn away all that opposes love's kind, right? And so in that safety, it's like, oh, now's the time for us to deal with the junk. Let's burn it away. Let's deal with it. And so if we could see that, trust God enough to stay when the stuff starts coming up and get quiet enough to hear the song, right? But when we get afraid, we run from it. We run back to the things that we know. We run back to the things that we're certain about or the things that we can control. Father Richard Rohr, he used to say all the time, God is not asking you to give up your past. You can include and transcend. And so, even in that question where I felt like Spirit was asking me to hand to them, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, to hand to them what I believe to be true about God, and they would hand me back what was true. God didn't take away every part of my experience of institutional church and
Mm,
all the different, you know, church experiences and things. The things that were true of that, I still own and love and are dear to me and are part of who I am today, right? And I've transcended that, in that now, even like we were talking about language, I can say God, I can say the divine, I can say love, and know for me, all of those things mean the same
mm,
thing to me. They are God, because 1 John 4:7 and 8, God is love. But how God revealed God's self to me was as love.
mm.
And so because of that, the expression of God that's most real to me, both personal and in the mystery, is that of love, right? And I use the divine sometimes because God is a mystery and is unknowable, and I don't know everything there is to know about God.
Yeah.
And so doing that reminds me that while I do have this very intimate and personal transformative love experience, there's also a lot about God that I just don't know.
Yeah, we have to be okay with the mystery. He's so much bigger than we are and so much
Yeah.
better than we know. And so
Yes.
much there's so much about him that we can't even contain in our human bodies and our
Yeah.
brain, our minds, as brilliantly created as we are, we're still human. And
Yeah.
so holding the possibility of perhaps I don't know everything there is to know, and perhaps everything I have been taught isn't exactly accurate. And it is a scary journey. And I know that's why people will push back against it. And that's why, we have to also figure out the best way to navigate that, to honor people wherever they are, and yet
Yeah.
still experience the joy and freedom of coming into deeper revelation of who God is.
I'm really drawn to wordsmiths. One of my best friends is a wordsmith, and I called you that even in my notes that I was taking. And but it's not just the way with words; it's the energy in which they come out of your mouth. The energy that, and how else do we explain it except energy? The
Yeah.
feeling, the Mm. And I experienced that at the conference as well, Felicia. And so there is something about the way of your being that you're able to share and communicate so generously. And I think that that's part of it. Maybe, Felicia, and we can just sort of slide into, it's not in my notes because I want to read a quote of yours, but how you came to a place of being able to share so generously, eloquently as well. And I mean, have you always been an excellent public speaker, for one thing, and a really wonderful communicator? What, because here's the thing, and as a communicator myself, people know when you're just regurgitating information you just learned. It may be the best thing since sliced bread. You read a quote by somebody and you're like, you just want to regurgitate it, but you haven't embodied it. People know. And so when I'm listening to you, Felicia, I believe you. Like every part of me believes you. And I just want to hang out with you. And like, let's just keep talking. Um, and so, how did you have you like always felt like this, or just share with us even your journey to becoming a communicator? But you're not just a communicator; you are I don't know, people who are not watching this, I'm like waving my hands of like, I don't know, an ocean wave or something. Do you know what I'm
This
saying?
is so I do. It's so funny that you asked that actually because I have had I will say this. I so when I was 9 years old, I will never forget this. My mom, we started in some denominational type churches, and then she became a born again believer, and we started going to all these different Pentecostal churches. So one night we're at a church, random church, North Carolina, and there's a little girl she was preaching. And I remember watching her preach. I think she was younger than me, but I know that I was 9. And I remember watching her and having an innate sense that I could do that.
Mm,
And I'd always had like this really kind of very private. I would use the word mystical now, but just private life in my bedroom with God. Like I had a little one of those little red pocket New Testaments, and I would highlight and read, and I could feel the presence of God in the room with me while I was reading. And I would read something and it would make me weep. Like I could just feel it. So I grew up very in that kind of thin space of spirituality or spiritual life with God. I will own that. Um, had that at 9, grew up in life, never thought about it again. As an adult, I actually got into direct sales for about a decade. And I was at a national convention, my very first one for this company, and they had a speaker on the stage. Um, I remember her name, what she was wearing to this day. And she was speaking, and as she was speaking, I had the thought, I could do that. And but it never left me. And I realize now that that person, both the little girl and this woman, was a mirror.
mm,
They were just mirroring this gift that was within me, that was dormant and was being invited to wake up. I didn't know that at the time. And then um after I started having these transformative experiences with love, I started teaching Bible study at church, and I was leading. I was teaching. I would take Beth Moore's Bible studies that she would do, and I was just facilitating them really. And my fourth round of a Beth Moore Bible study, I felt like Spirit said, "I don't want you to facilitate anymore. I want you to teach your own."
mm,
And so I started writing a Bible study called Come to Papa, which was about just literally a 7-week Bible study on walking people how to come into this kind of revelation of knowing God as love. How do you come home to love? And I wrote this Bible study and I started teaching it at our church for women. Um, and that was the opening for that. And then for several years from that Bible study, opportunities to speak and do things. And then my husband ended up deciding that he wanted to plant. At that time we were in a church that was probably about 1,600, 1,700 members. And my husband decided that he wanted to plant. And we decided to plant a church together as co-pastors, not with me and a kind of a pastor's wife role, but that we would do it together. He would preach a Sunday, I would preach a Sunday. We would alternate like that. And any month that had a fifth Sunday, we would preach together. And
cool.
so we planted a church in Virginia, and that's how we pastored. And from that, I started getting itinerant things and traveled to different countries, speaking and teaching and all of that. And in 2016, in the middle of speaking and teaching, I realized that I was having a crisis of language, in that I was starting to really. I have this moment that's important to include, I think, because I was wrestling with something um, that I was reading in the Bible and I would see it one way. But in the way of Jesus, I wasn't sure that that was the way. And I needed to be certain. I needed to be true. And I was begging God, I need you to answer me. I need you to tell me what is the truth here. You said that you would give me truth. I need you to give me the truth here. I need to be sure. Like I needed to be certain on this particular issue. And I wasn't hearing God. And one day while I was walking, I felt so, so strongly in my heart that I heard Spirit say, Jesus is more for people than he is for credo,
Ooh.
right? Like, people matter. People matter more than your beliefs. People matter more than your dogma. People matter more than your need to be certain. And so if you ever need to come down on a line of this, it's people. It's people. I believe in people. And that was it for me. And I was able to, and I have this image of me holding on to these pillars of certainty, like Samson was holding on to those pillars, right? And in that moment, when I felt Spirit say, people matter more than all this, I literally just took my hands and released this need to be certain.
Mm.
And it was like, I can trust God in the mystery. I can trust God in unknowing or not having to know it all, right? And so, but I was still getting all these invitations. So now I'm in a crisis of language because how do I rightly represent? And my prayer is always, let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, love. And I don't ever want to lead someone astray from the face of love. And that matters deeply to me. And so I realized that so much of my language, and I'm taking my hands and I'm doing this from the head up, my language was all in my
Mm.
head. It was all ration. It was all logic. It was all reason. It was all
Mm.
intellectual, right? Because that's how I had embraced studying the Bible. It was Bible studies. It was my strong concordance. It was my Bible dictionaries. It's all here. It's all the study of God, not the knowing or the relationality of God.
Mhm.
And Spirit was inviting me to change my language so that it wasn't just this, but it was this, my head, this, my heart, this, my gut, where my inner knower is, what Spirit is, so that all of me was representative in how I was breaking off and sharing my relationship with the divine, with the world around me. But I needed to stop. I don't know that deconstruct is the word, but I needed to to drain that, the head part, not drain it, but let it come into alignment
Mhm.
so that it was genuine, it was authentic, it was truthful, both to me and to God and to my experience with God. Um, and so for 2.5 years, I turned down every invitation that came my way.
Wow.
And I sat in my mat. I sat on my cushion each day with Spirit. I wrote some of what's in the book is during that time. But for 2.5 years, I turned down every invitation. And one morning, I got to that scripture about the person burying the talent. And I was like, ooh, okay. So I can no longer say no to every invitation. I have got to get to a place where I recognize that I have this in me, and this is how love is inviting me to participate in the world. And I say yes to
Mm.
that. And so I said to God, I will say yes. Unless there's a strong no, I will say yes. And that going forth. And so the next invitation that came, I don't remember what it was. I wish I could say exactly what it was, but oh, I do. I joined a teaching team at a church, actually. Some friend told a pastor that my husband and I were former pastors, and he asked us to go out to dinner. And we go out to dinner, and he said, if you ever want to preach, you just let us know. And Doug and I both said, we're not that kind of people. Like, we're never going to be like, oh, I want your pulpit. And I said, but we have pastored and we know how that can be when you're trying to carry the load alone. And so if you ever need a break or whatever, one of us will be happy to step in. 15 minutes later, after we left that restaurant, he texted and said, if you're serious about that, can you preach on February 25th, 2018, and that was my first day back in the pulpit.
Hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
So what is your, is that then, Felicia, is what would be your favorite form of communication? Because you are a poet, a writer, editor, speaker. What's, I don't know, maybe that question is too hard to answer.
No, definitely writing. I
Oh,
write to empty my insides, and I write to share the song of love,
mm.
and so, and I think in the writing I have time. I still get like sweat up under my armpits when I have to speak, and that, but I what I do when I'm speaking is I imagine that I'm putting my feet on top of Papa God's feet and that we're dancing together. And so, and I just try to do it as a dance. Um, but I was telling my husband, when you are kind of Pentecostal and charismatic, there's a there's a real like openness to spirit and the way spirit flows. I think that isn't necessarily as present in some other denominations. And in some ways, you don't have to necessarily lean on the scholarship when you're leaning on spirit. Um, and so it's easy to just kind of like, it doesn't mean that you show up unprepared. It's just it's hard to explain, but you kind of lean more into spirit. And so it's been a lot of growing and teaching to now bring the scholarship part
Mm.
um, into that dance with spirit in the speaking part. And it's one that I'm still learning how to do together. So I want to have it like very intellectual, but I also don't want to lose the energy of being with people in that moment,
Mm.
in the flow of that. And so that's a dance I'm still kind of working out a little bit. So it's like you said, how like you can listen to a communicator, know when they're just reciting a bunch of facts. And for me, if you've ever had a hug from Paul Young, you'll understand what I'm about to say.
Yes.
There's something when Paul hugs you, right? Like you know that God is coming through his hug to
Yes,
you.
you do.
And and so for me, when I stand and I speak, I want God to come through me in that way. I don't want it to just be all head. I want it to be the flow of love rushing through my body. And that is what I want people to feel on the other end. Like I have been invited into a very big hug. Yeah.
I might steal that for myself too. I like, because as a communicator as well, I want people to feel, I want people to feel loved. And I love that how you put that, Felicia. And there's something about the, like we were saying earlier, the feeling of, and even the knowing that you're seen. And all of us have the deep need, not just a desire, but the deep need to be seen and loved, and that belonging as we are. And we talked earlier of coming into that space of I'm just me, and there's no judgment from that other person, and that we know that safety. I've been meeting with a spiritual director since March, and it was the first time. I didn't even know what it was until like 6 months ago. A friend of mine, 20 years older than me, was saying, I have a spiritual director. I'm like, what is that? And that's what I'm experiencing. And I told her the other day, I said, this is the place I want to create for others, even if it's not in the context of we're doing an official session. How about just anyone sitting across from me, that I feel seen with all the parts hanging out, whatever that is. I feel known, I feel loved, and I feel safe. And I feel like there's massive shortage of that on the earth today. We don't know how to do that because it hasn't been modeled to us. And that's why, like, you are modeling this to others, Felicia, and that way then you're talking about the mirror. We can mirror that to one another. Like, this is here, what I'm experiencing with you is, oh, I see that in me. And not oh, I want to be just like Felicia. It's more of, oh, I'm now recognizing I have the ability, the capacity, or at least the desire to offer that same gift of presence to other people. I'm so passionate about that, the gift of presence. Even when we're doing a manual approach, it's like, it's the witness. And it's not just Jesus being with us, it is the person, it's a human. And he's not
Yes.
using us. We are partnering with Jesus to help that person experience being seen and loved and known. And I don't think that there's any greater gift that we can give somebody. They're experiencing then the divine. They're experiencing love, God as love, love as God through
Yeah.
us, in us, with us. And I appreciate you, Felicia, giving that to the world, because I felt like that from when we first started talking, and from when I heard you at the conference. And thank you for giving that gift of yourself to the world, to
Yeah.
all those that listen to you and
Yeah.
read you.
That means so much. Thank you.
Yeah. And we
Yeah.
would love to know how people can follow up with you or find out what you're doing, get your book. What are some ways for people to stay connected?
Yeah, absolutely. So the book is And the Restorative Power of Love in an Either or World. And it is available pretty much wherever books are sold online. So Amazon, Target, Barnes and Noble, shoptheword.com, I think is the publisher's website. There's a few independent booksellers that have it in their stores, but primarily it's available online. And then people can connect with me at FeliciaMurrell.com, Murrell, through my website, or on my Instagram, Hello Felicia at, I said that wrong, didn't I? At Hello Felicia underscore Murrell, Murrell. And I'm always over on Facebook.
Can I
So,
end us with just one of your quotes?
yeah.
Um, to be free, it is essential to become aware of how we're disconnected from our bodies. Who taught us to hate our bodies, to judge the way we look, the way we're shaped? How do they benefit from our disconnection? Think about it. And those that listening, I must say it to myself, think about it. How has your body cared for you? How has it held you? In what ways has your body supported you? Have you repaid it with judgment, criticism, curses, or with something far more beautiful? Our bodies are not our enemies. May we offer our bodies the same tenderness and compassion we offer to others.
Selah.
I'm Felicia.
Yeah.
I am gonna use this. I am gonna use this, and I will definitely. I mean, people are hearing this. That's not a Melinda original, because I so resonate with what you taught at Open Table. I'm like, girl, you put it a lot more eloquently and beautifully than what I'm experiencing. So I appreciate you giving words to what I've been learning and growing in and healing. So when I hear someone eloquently share it in words that comes as a gift, I just say thank you. Personally, for me, this is so much of my own journey. So thank you. And I know it's not just going to be a gift to me, Felicia. You are a gift to the world, to those that are listening to you. And so go find her on YouTube. I know you're on different, just look her up. And remember, it's Murrell like Pearl. And that's
It is.
easy to remember because you truly are a gift and a pearl. Thank you so much for the gift of
Yeah.
your time and presence in
Yes,
your
Thank
you
you.
can
heart.
search my name on YouTube and some things will come up. But thank you both really for today, for the conversation and for the gift of knowing. I hope that we get a chance to talk. I want to dig into your stories and hear more from you. So I look forward to being able to do that in the future.
I would
Absolutely.
love it. I'd be
Yeah.
honored.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for listening. And hey, listen, a reminder for you guys that want to learn the Emmanuel approach, even just the basics, come join us September 3rd as we have an 8-week foundations course, emmanueltraining.com/Emmanuel Foundations. We'd love to have you join us.
And that's really, honestly, for anybody who
Anyone.
wants to experience the presence of Jesus in a more tangible way.
Yep.
And even in the context of making a decision or having a couple
spiritual direction, coaching,
Jesus,
wisdom.
experiencing Jesus as
Even intercession.
your yes, as the one who's guiding and leading, and much more interactive in this friendship,
Yeah.
relational experience and connection with Jesus.
Yeah.
So we'd invite you to come along for the journey.
Join us. All right. We'll see you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. This is a listener-supported podcast, and if you have received value in any way from our content, we would truly appreciate you to partner with us financially, and you can do that by going to our website, facetofaceministries.org/give for tax-deductible giving. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.